Let's talk about AI. But what if the AI that's running our digital world is acting like like a hidden environmental pollutant? Not something that harms our lungs, but something that affects our minds. It's an unsettling idea for sure, but a really crucial one we need to explore today. It all really kicks off with this strange paradox we're all living through. We have never, ever been more connected in human history. And yet, if you look at the data, study after study shows we're facing this growing epidemic of disconnection. So, what is going on? And the scale of this problem? It's absolutely staggering. The US Surgeon General has actually declared social disconnection a public health crisis. And get this, he said the health impact is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Just let that sink in for a minute. And you know who's feeling this the most? The most vulnerable among us. Just look at the numbers. Between 2010 and 2019, the depression rate for teenage girls literally doubled. And in that same time frame, ER visits for self-harm among girls aged 10 to 14, they shot up by 189%. Something is going deeply, deeply wrong here. This isn't just a social crisis either. It's bleeding into our work lives. The average knowledge worker, people like you and me, now loses about 2.5 hours every day to digital stuff that has nothing to do with work. For companies, that's a huge hit. We're talking about a productivity loss of around 10,000 euros per employee every single year. So here's the really crucial point. These aren't just a bunch of separate problems. They're all symptoms of a much bigger issue. It's a crisis that's not rooted in any one app or one device, but in the entire digital environment that we're now all living in. To really get our heads around this, we need a new way of thinking. Let's start thinking about AI's constant influence as a cognitive environmental contaminant. Basically, a force that through slow, steady, cumulative exposure just degrades our mental health over time. Kind of like how lead in the water slowly poisons the body. And the parallel here is pretty striking, right? Just like with physical pollutants, the effects build up over time. They can take years to really show up, and they don't affect everybody the same way. Younger, developing minds are often way more susceptible. Okay, so if our digital world is this new environment, how exactly does this pollutant get into our system? Well, the research points to 5 main ways this happens, 5 pathways of impact. Let's break them down.
So the first pathway, and this is one you've probably felt yourself, is the erosion of our attention. They call this cognitive lead poisoning, and it makes sense. Every single time an algorithm optimizes to keep you engaged by showing you a shorter video or a crazier headline, it's subtly training your brain away from deep, sustained focus. And over time, that ability just wastes away.
All right, pathway number 2 is a growing dependency on these systems to manage our own emotions. You can think of this one as psychological arsenic. When we're constantly turning to our algorithmic feeds for a quick little dopamine hit or maybe to calm our anxiety, we're actually weakening our own internal ability to self-soothe. We become dependent on the algorithm for our emotional stability. Third, these technologies are fundamentally changing the very nature of how we connect with each other. This is what's being called relational endocrine disruptors. All these AI-mediated interactions, the likes, the shares, the perfectly curated profiles, they can actually change the neurochemical rewards we get from connecting with other people. And this might be making real, messy, face-to-face interaction feel a whole lot less satisfying. The fourth pathway gets into our ability to just make decisions for ourselves. This one's called cognitive mercury. Think about it. What to watch, what to buy, even where to drive. Each little decision we hand over to an algorithm seems totally harmless, right? But added up, it's like a slow poisoning of our decision-making muscle. It weakens our ability to think critically and choose for ourselves. And finally, the fifth pathway. This one goes right to the core of who we are, our very identity. This pathway is maybe the most subtle of all. They call it existential microplastics. Our feeds, our recommendations, they're constantly showing us who the algorithm thinks we are. And over time, these tiny, processed reflections of ourselves start to seep into our own sense of who we are. So why does any of this matter beyond our own personal well-being? Well, because the cognitive health of every individual is the bedrock of the collective health of a democracy. I mean, think about it. A functioning democracy needs citizens who can process information accurately, who can evaluate complex policies, trust institutions, engage with different points of view, and agree on at least a basic set of facts. As we've just seen, every single one of those foundations is being threatened by these cognitive impacts.
The potential outcome of all this cognitive erosion is, well, it's really serious. Political scientists have a name for it: democratic deconsolidation. It basically means the gradual weakening and potential breakdown of the very norms and institutions that hold a democracy together. So that leaves us with one critical question. If our minds are an environment, and that environment is being contaminated, who's responsible for protecting it?